Hi. Almost Merry Christmas. This is our last Agape Latte of the semester. We'll begin again in February after our break. And welcome. Before we begin, a few standard things. Please make sure your cell phones are off. Help yourself to any food throughout the evening. And I want to thank, in particular, Karen Kiefer, Paul from the Church in the 21st Century Center, and the Student Advisory Committee, who do a lot of great work for this. My name is Rick Rossi. I am with Campus Ministry, and Agape Latte is a joint venture between Campus Ministry and the Church in the 21st Century Center. Please be thinking. We're lucky to have Kwasi tonight, and while he's talking, please be thinking with some questions to have for afterwards. As always, Agape Latte is about you and our conversation that we have with our speaker. Please take this conversation beyond this room and tonight, and welcome. That's all I'll say. And Angela, I'll introduce Angela, who's going to introduce Kwasi. Thank you for being here.
Good evening. Tonight we have one of the last of the Agape series for this semester, and our guest speaker tonight is Kwasi Sarkozie-Mensah. So it is hard for me to introduce a man who has meant so much to me in my time at Boston College. But let me begin by saying that Kwasi is from Ghana. And for the past several years, he's not only brought Ghana to BC, but he's also brought BC to Ghana. He shared his experience with students here at Boston College and has taken them to Ghana, where they can experience what it's like to be in Africa, but also talk to Kwasi about where he's from. Kwasi, from where he's from. And tonight, his talk is this far God has brought me. And so as we listen to him, I want you to open your heart, open your minds, and hear what Kwasi has to say. Because if it's anything of what he's been telling me in the past 3 years, it will change your life. So please join me in welcoming Kwasi Sarkozie-Mensah.
Well, thank you so much for being here. I know it's kind of late, but maybe for our young people, I went to this talk and they told me young people work from 9 to 5. 9 p.m. to 5 a.m. So it may not be that bad but I think for some of us old people, this is close to our bedtime, but I'm still awake. When I was approached to be part of Agape Latte, the first thing that I asked was, why me? Because I know there are so many wonderful people at BC who do a lot of great work. In fact, on my drive back home almost every night, I think about all the people I come into contact with. And I was just kind of humbled to be the person, one of the people invited to be part of it. And I wanted to know why. And one person told me that you were told you can talk about anything under the sun. That's very bad. That means I could be full of, all kinds of air, hot air, cold air, mid-air and everything. But I seriously want to let people know how humbling this is for me, because I know there could have been so many other people who could have been here. I did a little bit of reflection. I've been thinking about this for almost 4 months now, and I wasn't sure how to begin this whole talk, because I wanted to go back in my life, think about all the different ways God has been part of my life, and I thought the best first thing to say was when I was growing up in Ghana. Now, what I did, you get up before 6 o'clock. I'll sit behind my dad's bedroom window. I wasn't spying on him or anything. But I waited for the BBC beep to go on, which was going to tell you that it was going to be 6 o'clock in the morning. Then you run quickly to the church bell and start tolling the bell as loud as possible. Up to this time, people in my hometown accused me of not getting them enough sleep. But getting the church bell at 6 o'clock was basically waking people up to prayer. Because when you tolled the bell in the morning, people got up, and within 15 minutes, you were all getting ready to go to church for service. I also asked myself if I should talk about one early morning when you were coming from the riverside. And those of you who don't know, when we grew up in Ghana, there was no running water in anybody's house. There was no running water in the neighborhoods. So when you got up in the morning after you did a church bell, went to service, you made about 10 trips to the riverside, with a bucket on your head just to fill the barrel in the house for everybody to use it. One day, you were coming from one of our trips, and every person in my village was wailing, crying. And that's when I found out that my oldest sister, who had had malaria, and then my parents had taken her to the hospital, had passed away. And you know, death is a very communal thing in Ghana. When somebody dies, within 2-3 seconds, everybody knows about it. So what I did was, of course, I threw the water away and ran home. That was a bad mistake for me because I had to go back and fetch one more bucket full of water. But the death of my sister not only brought me closer to my parents, and especially my mom, because my sister was the only female sheep in our herd in the family, and it was such a painful thing for me. I thought maybe what I could tell you as part of my story, maybe the first story was when I used to be with a lot of priests. Now, when we were growing up in Ghana, we didn't have parish priests. Parish priests will come to your hometown every 3 months, and then they'll come back to visit. So what happened was that my parents, especially my dad, was basically the priest, the catechist, the choir master, did everything for the church to go on. And what happened was that I learned at a very early age to be very, very church going. And I always remember that at the age of about 9 or 10, I used to lead the church services in my hometown. Up to this time, most of my mom's friends call me Osofo. Now, Osofo in Ashanti means a priest. For some reason, everybody thought I was going to be a priest, and I always have to share this with people. I never heard God calling me to become a priest, not even one single moment. But I also began to realize that you don't have to be a priest to be able to let people see God's face in everything that you do. So I'm not grateful that I didn't become a priest, but my dad always told me this story that if you tried the seminary and you didn't make it, you were going to lose your mind. Thinking about that, I think my dad really wanted me to get a job when I grew up, make a lot of money, and then make everybody happy, even though I don't want to go there now. But the crazy thing is that when I started high school, and I'm going to come back to this, my Latin master, who had tried the seminary, would come to class with a green sock on his left foot and a right sock on his right foot. So I knew my dad was very right. It was good that I didn't try to become a priest. My mom also had a story where, and now that I grew up, you know, I began to understand it. I spent a lot of time with priests in a very good way. When the priests came to my hometown, I was the one to go with them to different villages, to different parts of our region. My mom, now that I'm old enough, I think missed me not being home. And she used to say, you want to be with these priests because you got to eat chicken all the time. And Angela will tell you, back home in Ghana, we had chicken only at Christmas time. Christmas time was the only time we had chicken. When the priest came to your village, all the old women ran around. They brought him eggs, they brought him chicken. So when I was with the priest, every day was Christmas for me. So that was really, really good. Of course, I now understand why my mom really wanted me to be home more often. I got the opportunity to be very, very close to the priest. And I know in this environment, when you say you are close to priests, people become, they have different thoughts and everything. When you're growing up, priests were basically the best people that you could be friends with, the best people who really cared about you. And I'm going to tell you a story that really transformed my life. One thing that you got to do by being close to priests was that you got to sit in a car. You don't know how big a deal it was to be seen sitting inside a car. And I'm telling you, when the older people saw you, they were very jealous. And especially when they saw you sitting right next to a priest, I mean, somebody who was very widely held in society. People were just, I don't think they were angry with me, but they thought there was something very, very crazy about this little boy who was bold enough to be with all these foreign people. So as my town started to get what is called a mission house, which is a rectory in the United States, a lot of the priests will come to my hometown and travel from there. So I had the opportunity not only to be with them on a regular basis, going to different villages to say Mass, helping them out. I got the opportunity to travel with them to Kumasi, which is where the cathedral was. And the story is going to get better as I tell it. So one of the priests was going to go to Kumasi to the cathedral to do his priestly business. And I just went to him and asked if I could go to Kumasi with him. Now, that wasn't the smartest thing to do, because once you got to Kwasi, you were stuck in that car for about 6 hours with nothing to do, because he has so much work to do in the cathedral. So I got to Kwasi, and then suddenly I found out I had nothing to do. So I'm sitting in the car. I looked around, and I saw, I'm going to use the term white person, and believe me, there's nothing derogatory about it. When you speak of a white person, when I was growing up with the missionaries and everything, it was nothing negative, and there's still nothing negative to do today. So I saw this white person, tall guy, white robe, black robes around his waist. And then I walked to him and I said, Father, Dominus vobiscum, which means the Lord be with you. Remember, those of you who understand a little bit of the Latin rites. So he looked at me. He thought I had just landed from a different planet. And he said, I'm not father, I'm brother. So what the hell does brother mean? Because I'd never heard anything about, who a brother is. But this person became one of the most influential people in my life. His name was Brother Raymond, who was coming from one of the high schools set up by the Brothers of the Holy Cross. And those of you who follow football, Brothers of the Holy Cross reside at Notre Dame. Okay, so we had Notre Dame brothers in my high school, and what this person does was to go around, recruit people, and get them to go to his high school. So after I met him in Kumasi, I saw he had a car, so I really wanted to get inside that car. My attraction was just being inside a car with somebody else, and I said, if you drive me, I'm going to show you around the city. And I had never been to the city before. So he drove me around, and then we said goodbye to each other. The other priest came, he took me home. But the most significant part of this story was that this brother came back looking for me in my elementary school. And you won't believe what an amazing thing it was for an assistant headmaster, a big person, to come back to my village looking for me. My dad was the school principal. He was so petrified because nobody had ever had a white person, a missionary, drive all the way to come look for me. Now, this brother came, and he wanted to encourage me to go to his high school. St. John's Secondary School was founded by the Brothers of the Holy Cross in 1957. And guess how many miles my high school was? About 200 miles away from home. When I was growing up, going to high school was not a common thing. When I was doing my little bit of reflection, I actually came up with a number of people in my hometown who went to high school during my days. There were about 350 people, and only about 8 of us had the opportunity to go to a high school. How many of you had the opportunity to go to a high school? Everyone. I'm sure BC wouldn't have taken you if you hadn't gone to high school. But the most important thing about this is that when I went to high school 200 miles away from my parents, I was 13 years old. These brothers became our dad, our mom, our sister, everything that you really wanted to get from a person who cared about you. My school had a lot of snakes, cobra snakes, scorpions, and everything. You get bitten by a snake, you get sick, these brothers take you to the hospital. Now, there was one particular brother who had a very big influence on all our lives. And this is what I did when I was getting ready for this talk. I got in touch with all my Facebook friends from my old high school. And old people can be on Facebook. This is a free world, so don't start making fun of old people. So I said, if you had the opportunity to describe this one person in our high school, what words would you use? And I'm going to read this because I don't really want to miss anything. So Brother Raymond did everything. This is coming. He was a great teacher. He was the badminton, tennis, and basketball teacher and coach. He was the infirmarian and nurse. He was the bandmaster. He was the mailman. He was the assistant headmaster. He was the one who would come to the United States for vacation and spend the little time that he had collecting clothing items, medicine, band instruments, toothpaste for us. He was everyone's father, brother, and friend. Then I also asked them, what do you think about the brothers in general? How would you describe them? Because I know that my life was transformed through the work the brothers did. And this is something that I did in terms of summary. The brothers in our high school did many honorable things for many helpless people without ever seeking recognition. In their quiet, gracious, and respectful manner, they went out of their way to be there for us. And it was so easy to see the face of Jesus, the face of God, through what they did. This is how a lot of my friends describe our brothers. So I'm going to fast forward a little bit. When I first came to BC many, many years ago, this is my 19th year here, I remember going to a diversity workshop Wednesday through Friday. So it's about 2:15, and the diversity person, who is an expert on all issues diversity, was going to start the workshop by going to train people how to deal with white people. Because anytime you come across a white person, you had to assume that he or she was racist. So I'm sitting there and I'm saying, it's 2 o'clock. This is going to be 72 hours. And if this is the premise on which you're going to start this retreat, this diversity workshop, I don't think I'm going to survive it. So I opened my big mouth and I raised up my hand very respectfully and I said, I am so sorry. Because I'm not going to be able to sit in this room for the next 72 hours if you want me to believe that every white person that I see is a racist. And oh la la, this person, I've never seen anybody get so angry. She was an expert in diversity. She knew everything about diversity. And then she got so angry with me. So she went, you Africans don't understand the race thing. You've come, and I said, no, then she said, I think what killed me was, the missionaries came and then they poisoned your minds. And you don't really get it. So I said, excuse me, we've only got to know each other for 7 minutes. So don't start writing my whole life story based on what I just told you. I just didn't feel comfortable sitting there, going to sit there for the next 3 days, listen to somebody who has so much hatred in her heart. And I always remember this very well because most of the people in the diversity workshop couldn't believe it. Everybody opened their eyes. They thought I was a troublemaker. And I'm saying, I'm so sorry. You just have to understand that I can't sit here and believe this. You can't say trash, right? Okay. And believe this because I really don't believe that every single white person that I encounter is a racist. And she wasn't very happy with me, wouldn't talk to me for a while. At the end of the 3rd day, she knew who I was, and I told people. She even gave me a hug, so that was not a bad thing. Now, why do I bring this issue? Whenever I go to different places, and I'm not here to be disrespectful of color or anything, whenever I go to any place, one of the questions that I get is, and it's happened to me at BC, it's happened to me in my church, is, why do you as a black person feel so comfortable in a white environment? Or why do you as a black person feel so comfortable in your church? And I'm saying, in my high school, with what the brothers taught us, every single human being is a child of God. Every single human being should know how to be present anywhere you go. I'm not saying, be very noticeable. Don't take off your clothes. I mean, you could get into trouble for doing that. But seriously, what the brothers told me was that when you go into any place, be present there, get people to know who you are, find out how you can actually be part of the community, and make sure that you don't you don't keep the gifts that God has given you. And I have to tell you that on my life journey, going to Holy Cross High School, being brought up by these white brothers, being taught so much about my own faith, respect for other people, is what has brought me this far. And I'll just spend maybe 2 or 3 minutes telling you about some of the things I've been able to do with my faith and with the way I was brought up by the brothers and my parents. Every time I move into a community, one of the first things that I go look for is a church. So I have to find out where the church is. It has to be within maybe 10, 15 minutes, because I don't want to travel 2 hours to go to a church and nothing against, black or white people. I just want to go to a church that I can practice my Catholic faith. The other thing that I do is I try to get involved, and I'm not blowing my own horn. I'm very active as a lector. I'm very active as an Eucharistic minister. I'm very active teaching Sunday school. In fact, I love reading in church to the point where I had this encounter with a person in my church. The lady said, every time you stand up to read, my son says you are reading in Spanish. So I know he was paying attention. It's amazing to see how the gift of the Holy Spirit can actually move little children to hear in tongues. I read in English, but he hears in tongues and everything. One thing that I've also been able to do is to get very active in my parish. And once again, I'm saying this because a lot of times, and especially with many Africans coming to the United States, many Ghanaians coming to the Catholic Church, we get so isolated. And I'm not condemning the Catholic Church in the U.S. or being very condescending. It's not an easy thing, speaking for myself as an African, to walk into a Catholic church in the United States and stay. You know what I do? When I go to a Catholic church, I welcome myself. I have a Christmas for myself. I eat my chicken with the people in the church. And I'll tell you what happened the first time I went to St. Malachi's Church after Mass on a Saturday morning. So it's about 9:45, about 6 older people are folding the church bulletin. I go to the church rectory and I pull the chair and I invited myself. They're all looking at me. It's like, who is this idiot? It's like, yeah, it looks like you guys need help with folding the bulletins for Mass tomorrow, so I'm here to help. And we still laugh about this. This was in 1999. That chair is still there, and we've been folding that church bulletin almost every single Saturday right after Mass. And that's how I have become part of this parish. I've been able to get on the parish council. I think they bribed me to be on the parish council because I came back from one of my trips from Ghana, and I had a note from one of the people saying, since you are so churchy, we think you'll be very, very good on the parish council. How could I say no to that? I just couldn't say no to that. So I did it for 3 years, and they used another set of beautiful words to describe my involvement in church. I did parish council for 6 years. And it has been such an amazing thing for me as a Catholic to also understand the Catholic Church in the United States, because people come to parish council with a lot of ideas, a lot of anger, a lot of issues, and you just have to learn how to listen to people. The last thing that I've been able to do in terms of church is I actually went to my last meeting in Braintree. I've been on the advisory council for the Diocese of Boston, and when we left Saturday, Cardinal Sean was on his way to Paraguay, and just this morning I got a note from the nun who is in charge of the council asking me if I want to serve for a second time. And the reason why I share this with you is that you don't really have to isolate yourself. God gives us so many gifts. Our parents give us so many talents. God continues to bless us with different things that we can't even understand. And I don't know about you, it's not easy for me to go to church and take the back seat. I have this dream of learning to fly a plane. So I think one of the things that drives me is when I get to church, instead of sitting in the pulpit, I want to be the person or one of the people who are driving that plane, flying the plane and taking people closer to their God, taking people closer to places where their faith should take them. I thought I should end my little conversation with you, the beginning of the conversation, by encouraging you to be out there, go out there, be part of every community. And I say this to every person, black, green, yellow, white, brown, gray. It doesn't really matter. This is your world. I don't think many of us are going to be in this world for more than once. Now, if you don't participate in your church or in your community, I know there is heaven, but I think heaven is where you take your eternal vacation. So be very careful about taking your vacation here on this planet. Get involved in anything that you are interested in. Get involved in your church. Don't be deterred by the fact that you look different from people. Don't be deterred by the fact that people are going to tell you in your face you don't belong. Now, when people tell you don't belong in their church, you have to show them the way outside the church, because the best place for the person who doesn't want you in the church is not in the church, but outside of the church. I have been very, very blessed with so many gifts, and I can't take any credit for any of these gifts. I praise the Brothers of the Holy Cross from my high school. I praise my parents who gave me the opportunity to try to do things to let people see God's face in almost every single step that I take. And I can't be grateful to the various church communities that I've been part of, because when I've invited myself into the church, into a school, into a community, people have been very, very open and then welcomed me. And that's because I think when the Brothers of the Holy Cross told you to know how to be very confident, be yourself, be self-inviting, it was a call for us to be part of humanity. And I'm just hoping that as we all continue this journey, you're going to be brave enough to stand up against people who think we don't belong where we are. Be brave enough to stand up against someone who tells you a white person, a black person, a yellow person, a brown person is racist. Get to know people before you start to pass judgments. If you run into somebody who thinks they are better than you because of their color or height or weight or anything, sit down and have a conversation with them at that particular point. Don't go back to your room and tell 20 people who can't do anything about the situation. And once you do that, you know that God is behind you, because you want to do it in a very prayerful and respectful way, so that the two of you or the two different groups will be able to make this world a better place than we found it. I think I'm going to shut up because you're getting tired of hearing my voice, so thank you.
All right, thanks. Yeah, this is our point for some conversation, so please, any questions or comments for Kwasi or each other as well.
This is like the Oprah Winfrey show. I like it.
From your experience growing up in Ghana, how do you find the church in Ghana different from the church here today?
People dance in church in Ghana. But when we go to Ghana, one of the first things that we do is we go to church. And I didn't know BC students could really dance, Yeah. Now, church in Ghana, from my own experience, is that it's from my cultural, I think it's more participatory in Ghana. Nothing against the Catholic Church in Ghana. I used to go to a church, Catholic Church in the U.S., and I won't mention the city. I used to go to this church where if you fell asleep and everybody walked out, you'd be sleeping for the next 10 or 15 hours. You'd be snoring. That's why it's so hard for many Africans to stay with the Catholic Church. in the United States. I think people always expect that, noise. I'm not saying you can't be quiet and be joyful, but people expect to find the same kind of affection, the same kind of warmth. And I think the only thing that we are missing is that we don't learn how to invite ourselves in a Catholic community in the U.S. And whenever I come across somebody who has just come from Ghana, I'll take them to my church. Because once they show up at my church and it's all white, I have to kind of calm people down because I can't do CPR when people begin to freak out because everybody looks different from them. It's a very tough thing for people. People just we haven't learned how to be part of the Catholic Church. And a lot of people end up going to a church of people just from Ghana, a church from people from Nigeria in Boston. I usually like 12 minutes before Mass. I'm not going to be able to drive 12 minutes from Wilmington to Boston. So I do my 12 minutes to the parish that I've become such a big part of. But I think it's the participation and the cultural aspect of people not really learning to invite themselves into the church. And I also have to say the church in America should also be very willing to go out of their way and invite people. Be bold. You may offend somebody culturally, but take that first step and invite people to be part of the Catholic faith. That was a long answer. Any?
Thank you. Hello. Just wondering, do you have either like specific words that you live by, like just a phrase or a quote or something that has always meant a lot to you, or just like a specific sermon that you've heard that has always stuck out to you throughout your life?
You know what I do when I wake up, and I like to use music to worship. And one of the pieces of music that I learned growing up is, "Holy, holy, holy God, you are so holy." Most of the time when I get in my car in the morning, that's what I'm singing till I get to the place in the morning. Because by me looking at God as a holy entity, I pray that every single thing that I do that day will be holy. Every single thing that I touch will be holy. Every single act that I engage myself in will be holy. And it's my challenge. I don't succeed all the time, but when I think about how holy God is, I strive a lot not to be as holy as Him, but to be, do the best I can to be holy in everything that I do. It's like a chant to me, but it energizes me, it wakes me up. When I begin to sing it, sometimes I think I'll get like a speeding ticket, getting to work, because I get really excited just singing this song about how holy God is. I roll up my window so the police can tell I'm polluting the environment with my sound and everything. So, other questions, observations? Yeah. How did I get to BC from Northeastern?
From high school.
Oh, from high school. Okay. The whole. So you need the GPS for my trip from high school to BC. I'll tell you. So Angela will also tell you, when we were growing up in Ghana, right? The first 5 years in high school was the most crucial. Because if you failed after the first 5 years, that could be the end of your life. You couldn't go up further. I was so confident I wasn't going to fail. When I finished my 5th year, I left every single thing that I owned in my high school. And I said, if I failed, I'll go in the middle of the night, take that box, and run away from the high school. But lucky for me, I made it in 7 years. So I went to college in Ghana. I did my first 2 years in Ghana. I studied abroad. This was in 1977. I went to the Ivory Coast, France, and Spain. Came back to Ghana to finish. I taught at a Muslim high school in Ghana. Very interesting part of my life. And then what happened is that in the 1980s, Ghana was not the most affluent country on the continent. So the best way to make it in life was to go to Nigeria. So I spent 2 years in Nigeria, saved almost every single penny that I made, And then I came to the United States in 1982, went to grad school, did my master's, got a PhD. Within 3 years, I was actually ready to defend my dissertation in 3 years. My professors were not. And my first job was at Xavier. My first job was at Xavier University in New Orleans. And those of you who don't know, Xavier University was founded by Catherine Drexel and her Sisters of the Blessed Sacrament. During the time when black people and white people, Native Americans and white people couldn't sit in the same classroom, Catherine Drexel and her sisters founded school to make it possible for black people, Native Americans, to get an education. So when I went from Xavier, I came to Northeastern, and I always tell the story where 3 years after I was at Northeastern, I saw a job at BC, and I didn't like coming to BC because every time I had to drive to the library to get a book. Commonwealth Avenue was very bumpy, and I really hated getting to this part of town. So I remember one day saying, I hope I never end up at this part of Boston again. My boss at Northeastern sat me down for almost 6 hours and talked me out of coming to BC. And on my way home, I just said, I'm going to try BC. So I arrived in 1992, and I haven't gone back. Does that tell you about the entire story? Okay, thank you. Any other questions about? And BC is the best place I've ever been. No, seriously. This is my home. And I feel at home. I'm not kidding you. I feel so much at home at BC. And I love the work that I do here. And the people that I learn from every day.
When you came to BC, is there anything in particular that you really liked that made you stay, or like that initially attracted you to it?
Anything that made me stay? Okay. I'll tell you what okay. Before I started at BC, I came to an orientation, and Father Ninan said something that stuck with me. He said, at BC, we always say we. That means we are in this together. So we are doing this, we are doing this. We are teaching people, we are taking people to Ghana. I never say I'm taking people to Ghana. I think the whole concept of we made it so attractive for me to be part of BC. Because that's me. I always want to be part of, I come, I'm present, I invite myself, and I don't regret any single day that I've been at BC. I was doing a little bit of reflection this morning, and I also realized that when I went through the intersection seminar for faculty and staff, intersection taught us to take our work as our vocation. Now, I was very lucky to take that course early enough during my career at BC. I've seen every single thing that I do as a call from God. And when I'm in your presence, you are the most important person that I'm dealing with. When I'm in the classroom at BC, I know I'm standing on holy ground, and I just bring myself into what I do. And I think that keeps me so energetic. And also very lucky, because a lot of people wake up every morning not very happy about going to work. I got sick one day, and I was so sad I wasn't going to be able to come to work. And my neighbor said, you need a break. You need to stay home. Just take this one day off and take it as your sabbatical or something. Seriously, everything that I've seen done at BC has brought me a lot of great joy. And I hope it's that for many people here. Because I just can't imagine you waking up every day and not liking what you do, being where you are. That must be painful. That's like torture, No, it is. I mean, you wake up every day and you go to the place that you don't want to be, complain about everything. I don't know. Was that the answer? Okay.
Are you involved in anything else on campus outside of your job, or just?
Am I involved in anything on campus? So I think Angela mentioned we do have a service trip that has been going to Ghana for 8 different times. And I'll tell you how we started. I was sitting in my office in 1994, and Father Tedesiak, who used to run the Ignacio Volunteers, which is now Arupe, right? Walked into my office and said, do you want to come to Belize with the Ignacio Volunteers? And I said, yes. And I just realized that I didn't even know where Belize was. So, because my geography was so bad in Ghana, it coincided with my Latin classes, so I never took any good geography. But that was the beginning of my involvement in the service trips. And I always tell people, I can't believe you've done 12 service trips together. I was very, very active with the Martin Luther King Scholarship Committee. I did that for about 15 years, and I just withdrew a little bit to give the opportunity to other people to be part of it. One thing that I really enjoy is to be part of orientation. I'm sure all of you remember when you came through the library, freshman year, many, many years ago. I know that moment can be very, very tiresome and challenging and everything. I love to be part of it and bring a little bit of joy to orientation. In fact, I have several of my students from my Cornerstone advising here. One thing that I've always been fortunate to do is to have at least 8 to 12 freshmen that I can advise. And that gives me one of the biggest joys in my life, because I see a group of people who show up on the first day in class as not strangers, and then within 2 or 3 weeks, we've built a family, and we just don't want to let each other go. So do other things. Sometimes I forget what else I do at BC. What else do I do? So, anything else?
When's your next service trip to Ghana?
My next service trip to Ghana is not going to happen for a while. But there's a reason. No, seriously. We will be going to Ghana, but we are not going to be doing what we've been doing, which is teaching young people basic computer skills. The chief of my town was 2 years behind me in elementary school, and he just resettled in Ghana after spending about 20-something years in the United Kingdom. He wants to build a computer camp for the children in Ghana, and I want BC to be part of this new project that he's going to be working on. So for 2011, we are taking a break, and hopefully within another 2 or 3 years, we'll go there not to teach the children what we do, but to work with them in the camp, be with them, show them different things to do. So I'm taking a sabbatical for next year, and then hopefully we start Ghana again within 2 years or so. So keep checking. What year are you?
I'm a freshman.
Oh, yeah, you have a lot of time. 3 years and a few months. I don't want it to make it sound like eternity. So, Dimitri.
Do you have any hobbies or anything that you like to do on your free time when you don't have any tasks?
When I don't have it, I do a lot of service stuff. My church started, I don't know if that's a hobby, but my church started this called the Boston Socks Exchange. We go to Park Street like every one Saturday of the month, and we give to the homeless warm clothing, food, other things. And the reason why I do that is that, and I don't know if it answers your question as a hobby, when people come to interview to go to Ghana, to go to Rwanda, to go to Uganda, and they get rejected, we think the world is coming to an end. I always have to remind people that 10 minutes away from here, 20 minutes from my church, when I go to Park Street, I'm able to see how I can also be part of the people in my community, which is here in the Boston area. I like, play tennis. I like going to the gym because I need to watch my height and everything. I also love to write. When I have some free time, I do a little bit of writing, both academic and not so academic.
All right, thank you, Kwasi. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Can we just get one more round of applause for Kwasi? I think it was great.
Thank you so much for coming. This is good stuff. You're good people, too.
So just one little brief announcement. As I'm sure you all know, Agape Latte is a part of Church in the 21st Century Center. And the point of coming out here the first Tuesday of every month is that we want to create a discussion, not just here, but all over really campus would be the great goal. And I think Kwasi brought up a lot of excellent points for discussion that I'm sure will really resonate with you. One thing that we're trying to start with the center is a discussion on our blog and on our Facebook page. So if you could check out, Latte has a Facebook page, and you can become a fan of Church in the 21st Century on Facebook. There will be pictures up from tonight's event, and there will be a discussion board. We'd love to hear your input. We'd love to hear what you thought of this wonderful talk. But let's give it up for Kwasi one more time. Thank you all for coming.